Yes, what is the story? Nosy here, one half of the FPL Draft Duo. Today we're looking at defenders in depth. We're looking at the strategies and picking defenders, ranking them, and looking at some hidden gems for you to pick up in the later rounds. So what are the key concepts that we need to understand when picking defenders in the draft, and what strategy are we going to use so that we can pick them at the best time possible? So if we look at the four categories I have on the screen at first, we have premium, top tier, solid and late gem, and these are the categories that are going to correlate to my ranking later on. So you can briefly see there I have one beside premium, one beside top tier, two solid and one late gem. This is what I think is a good strategy for defenders. When you're going to pick them players up, I have beside them. So I think if you're going to go for one of the premium defenders, 3 and 4 might be generous. I think by round 3, a couple of these premium defenders are going to be picked. The likes of Trent, I've seen him go late round 2, late round 3. I've even seen him gone late round 1. So that totally depends on the night. But I think for round 3 and 4, you should aim to have at least one of them. If you're looking at the top tier defenders that we're going to look through, I think 5 and 6 is a good time to have one of these. Having the strategy, one premium, one top tier by round 6, with a couple of forwards in there and a midfielder, that could be a great strategy. It could give you great balance to your team. Now, if we're looking at our solid picks, I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. You can get an awful lot of solid players that we're going to look at very late rounds, 7 to 9, even later if you want. And I think this is where you should target some of these solid picks. I think if you're going any earlier, you're going to lose value on some of the midfielders or strikers that might be available. And I think you should have one, if not more, late gems. You can pick up these players around 11 to 15. Like, my strategy is that I'm going to pick up one of these defenders as my last pick. There is so many of them that have good fixtures that can rotate very well with other teams. So having one, if not two spots left in your defenders at late rounds is probably the way to go. This is, again, a very rough estimation. This changes from draft to draft. It totally depends on how players are picking them. One piece of advice I'd give you is don't just jump on defenders when everyone else is. Because 1 or 2 defenders are taken doesn't mean that the next 5 or 6 are going to be taken. And sometimes then it can actually benefit you. If you have a look at other players' teams while you're drafting and you see that, okay, majority of people have 4 defenders, there's not going to be as much of a rush for them last defenders, and you might have a bit of time to wait until picking your next one. And I have a little defender formula here just to put in perspective what type of players we should be going for. Obviously we want the big premiums, the big scorers, but clean sheets are priority. Returns, also very important, but minutes too are very, very important. If we have a defender that has all 3 of these, obviously they're perfect. If we can get 2 of them, that's great. Preferably, I would want a bit of all 3. And let's look at an example here. So I have a Kanji. And again, these are rough estimations. These are not accurate, but they are accurate based on stats from last season. But the actual FPL points mightn't add up exactly. That has to do with, obviously, bonus points and so on and so forth. But in general, let's have a look. A Kanji could go in one of them 5 to 6 rounds, a top tier defender. But if we look at him statistically, is he a top tier defender? Because we know Pep Roulette. On average, defenders will get probably maybe 28, 30 games. So that's 8 games less than, let's say, a Mitchell of Palace, who is probably going to play all games. And I'm not saying him per se, but I'm saying a player like him that is nearly nailed on in their team and that has a slight upside for attacking returns. He's not one of these Pedro Porros or Trents, but he's going to get a couple of returns in the season. And if we look at literally last season, Akanji had 11 clean sheets, that equated to 44 points. 0 assists, 2 goals, 10 points. And he got a total of 39 points from minutes played. So a rough estimation of around 93 points. what seems like a great player that people might take in a relatively early round, and for me, early is 5 or 6 for defenders. A player that seems great on paper is not so great because he's not playing the majority of minutes, he's losing a lot of points to minutes, and he's not the most attacking player. Again, this is an example. You can apply this to many of the Man City defenders and also other defenders that you think are really, really attacking, but in reality, they're just minutes. That's the only way you're getting points, from minutes. And if we compare Akanji to Mitchell, now I guarantee you Mitchell would have went way later in the draft than Akanji last year, but let's look at his stats. So his stats, he had 10 clean sheets. Palace were very solid last year and they were right in the middle of the range of clean sheets. So the range of clean sheets went from 6 to 16, Arsenal up at the top end and Palace right in the middle. I expect them to be something similar, if not slightly better this season. So let's say that Mitchell does get 10 clean sheets next season. And again, he matches his around 5 attack and returns output, which is not a huge ask of a left or right back over the whole course of the season. Now, where Mitchell was exceptional, he played in 37 games. I think the average was 87 minutes per game, so notched up them playing points, which are absolutely essential when it comes to defenders. And so this is why I'm against going for them big defenders that might have high upside but are only going to play maybe 70% of the games. Because if they don't actually get them clean sheets or attacking returns, well then their ceiling is going to be way lower than someone who's consistently playing, getting 2 and 3 points every game and then the odd attacking return and clean sheet thrown in there. But my overriding idea around picking defenders is to not overvalue them. If you don't get one of them premiums, don't worry about it. Don't rush into picking them in round 3 and 4 just because you see other people picking them. Have an idea in your head and stick to it. This is a solid base, but if that doesn't work, that is absolutely fine. Let us go on to our new section, Jaxie's stats section, and this is a section where Jaxie's going to pick out some key stats from particular players that he likes, and we're going to have a look at them. First up, Ben White. As Jaxie has highlighted here, he was not at the Euro, so he's going to be fresh coming back for Arsenal. There is a lot of defenders that have been away that haven't even played with their teams yet, so that is one bonus for picking up Ben White. Now Ben White is one of them premium defenders and will go very, very early. I think around 4, that probably is where he is. Round 3, there's going to be too many good strikers, midfielders available. I've been waiting for round 4, but round 4, if you want that premium defender, Ben White is probably going to go around then. He probably is the most nailed for Arsenal, if not Saliba. The benefit of Ben White is all the stats you see on the screen here. He had 4 goals last season, second most goals of a defender after Romero, 4 assists. He had 13 clean sheets, 14 bonus points. He had 776 bonus points on the actual bonus point system, which was the second most last season. So he's one of them players that are going to get a lot of key passes, successful passes, aerial duels. He's going to rank up on those bonus point system very, very quickly, but you're going to have to pick him early. If you're picking Ben White early, I think you might want to go towards your midfielder, your strikers then, just to make sure that you don't come up short in any other areas. If you go for a defender very quickly after Ben White, chances are your midfield is going to be slightly depleted or your attack force is going to be slightly depleted because you will have to pick him up around 3, 4 maybe. My recommendation would be 4. I think that's a good valuation of him. If not late round 4, I think after that he is gone. Next up is Munoz, and I was looking at stats from Munoz as well as Jaxie, and one thing I did notice is he had a very, very good Copa America. So although he had only half a season, as Jaxie stated, he had 16 games, 16 starts, 90 minutes, 4 assists. He outperformed his expected assists. It was 1.3, we'll say he got 4. So some people might highlight that and say that he had an over-expected output. But I do think that the positions that he picks up under Glasner can be extremely beneficial to you in the draft. He averaged 3.5 points per match. I know it was only 16 games, but Ben White had 4.9 and he was top scoring defender. Van Dijk had 3.2, Doji 2.8, so he's really in that top tier range of points per game. Can he keep that up for 38 game weeks is the question. And the biggest question is how soon. I think the biggest problem with Munoz is people are taking him up on the premium defenders. They're taking him round 3 and 4 when they see other major defenders go. Now, I think he can be extremely good. I would be very weary about taking him too early. I don't know if I'd be targeting him as my first defender. I think if you got him as your second defender, I think that would be a fantastic result, and maybe go for one of the premiums or top tiers that are going to be solidified in your team. But really exciting. I think he will do very well. It just all depends on where he is drafted, and currently I think he's been drafted slightly too early. If in your league you can get him slightly later, good, but don't go for him too early. And finally, on Jaxie's stats section, he has picked out Ryan Sessegnon, and there's a lot of pros and cons to this dude. If we go back in time and went to his prime when he was like 17, his last full season playing, 2 goals, 6 assists, that was Fulham when they were in the Premier League. That was 18-19 season, so we are talking a couple of years. Before that was a ridiculous season, 15 goals and 6 assists for Fulham in the Championship. Fun fact, on his 50th Fulham appearance, he banged a hat-trick, and I think he was the first person to do it since Dele Alli, the first teenager to do it since Dele Alli, so he was a real wonder kid. The best thing about him is that he has the potential to play left wing. If we look at Fulham's squad, Fulham have a lot of, as I have down here as a negative, a lot of new creative players. So if we look at the negatives and then bring it back, he hasn't played consistent football in years. We can see that from the stats. Robertson had a great season last season. I think good was a bit harsh on me. He had 6 assists and was solid for Fulham. And as I said, they have a lot of new creative players. The thing for me is that they have a lot of new creative players, but they're very central players. Iwobi, Andres, Smith Rowe, a lot of them like to operate through the middle. So if they needed a left wing back, he could be that man. He could be that gem that allows them to change shape. I'm not saying to pick him up. I just think he's a very interesting one. And I do think that if he gets in after game week 1 or 2, Fulham have a very, very good run of fixtures. I think Sessegnon has the potential to be one of them very good early waivers in to your team. The question is, do you want to take the risk prior to draft night? Hopefully we might have more information, some quotes on him that might give us more information. He might not play, he might not ever come into your team, but a very interesting one to look out for. So let's get on to our rankings, and as you can see, I have the 5 premium defenders up there. I have Trent number 1, and I definitely think Trent is going to go first. I think Trent is still worth it. I think the way Slot is playing, them underlapping runs, if you want to go for Trent in them early rounds, that's absolutely fine by me. The round 1 Trents, I don't know. Even the round 2s, I struggle to do it myself. It could be a fantastic statistic. It could be unbelievable pick by the end of the year. I don't know if I have it in me to go that early. I just really like to prioritise midfielders and forwards. But if you want to go maybe round 2, late round 2, and you feel that it's worth it, that's grand. Round 3 I think is going to be a very good pick-up for Trent. The other defenders, I think they go round 3, round 4. I think towards the end of round 3, people will start looking at these top quality defenders: Guardiola, Ben White, Saliba, Porro. I know a lot of people have question marks over Porro, but that might have to do with normal FPL. I think he's going to be really good this season. Again, he's kind of picking up them pocket spaces, even more so than last year. Trent, as we said, underlapping runs based on Slot's tactics, but Porro was in some really, really advanced position in pre-season, and I think if I was going for anyone, I'd like to go for Porro because you might get him slightly later. Again, the clean sheets are not there for Spurs. That's the only problem. You are relying on attack and returns, so if you actually compare them one to the other, the likes of a Saliba versus Porro, there mightn't be much in it in the end, but I think these players will reach them top FPL points for defenders this season. No later than round 5, they're probably going to be gone. Around the 4, around the 5 mark, if you have one of these, that's a good start. Okay, on to our top tier picks. And as always, I'm not doing every defender here. I'm just looking at defenders that I would personally pick up on draft night. There's loads more in my watch list, but I'll pick them up if I kind of have to, if I feel that they are value. But I think in terms of our ranking of players, these are our top tiers. Now I have Trippier in there. I don't know. Obviously he's a top tier. If he plays majority of minutes, he's a top tier defender. There's no doubt about that. He's a premium defender. It's just that overriding idea that he might leave, or even leave in January. So yeah, if he stays top tier, but he also could be down in the traps. There is a couple of question marks about a couple of these players. Robertson might miss the first couple of games, just coming back from injury. Gabriel, although I still think obviously he's a top tier. We have Calafiori, we have Timber coming in there. I think what we're going to see from Arteta this season is literally a mould into Guardiola. That we are going to see Guardiola. We are going to see them defenders rotate an awful lot. So Gabriel's minutes might be reduced slightly this year. And that kind of is a question mark for me. If he plays 80% of the time, fine, I'll keep him top tier. But if you think that he's going to play less than 70% of the time, or less than 80% of the time, I think it's maybe leave it for someone else and pick up one of the other premium defenders. Pick up a Porro if Gabriel is still there. Pick up a Robertson instead. I think they are going to be more solid picks throughout the season. And, you know, this could be totally wrong. Gabriel might play 100% of the games. But I think if we look at all the facts, we have two players that can play centre-back and left-back come into the side. And Gabriel is the main minutes risk there. Obviously, apart from Zinchenko or any of the left-backs. Of those solid Arsenal picks, he has to be third on the list, even though his expected goals is way higher than the other ones. I would just worry about his playing time. On to our solid picks, and we have a lot of these. We actually have a lot of solid and late gem picks. I would put a lot of the solid and late gem picks into the same category of FPL points. I just think that a lot of these solid picks are probably going to be picked up slightly early. So top of that list as we have Munoz. I think if you can pick up Munoz in a later round, later than 5, as maybe your second pick, absolutely fantastic. I just worry about how early he's going to go and how that will translate into FPL points. Walker, of the Man City players, he's the only other player I'd be targeting. One of the most nailed. One of the only players that can play right back like he can. So if I'm looking at City defenders, it's Guardiola or Walker. Other than that, I don't really care for them. Even just look back at the equation at the start. On average, they're probably not going to get as much points as the likes of a Fabian Schär. They could have an exceptional season and play every game, but the likelihood is that Fabian Schär will play 90% of games. They'll keep a decent amount of clean sheets. He might get a couple of attacking returns, and he's going to be a very solid player for your team. Same with Braithwaite, same with Tarkowski. Braithwaite, 13 clean sheets last season. Dyche is there again. Doesn't look like changing, so even if they reduce slightly and get 11, that's okay. Both of them are very, very good in the air. If they get 3-4 attacking returns, isn't that absolutely fine from a player that will play probably 38 games for you? You're going to get a decent score out of those solid picks, and they're going to, as I said, solidify and have balance to your team. Very similar with a lot of these late gems. Now, a couple of them, let me pick out some of them. Mikalenko, Pau Torres, Mitchell, they're all going to be players that are going to play the majority of minutes for their teams. They're going to have a decent amount of clean sheets for a mid-table club, if not, maybe top 6. And they're going to get a couple of attacking returns in there. It's not going to be every week, but they're going to be players that you can pick up in relatively late rounds, like honestly 9 or 10. I've seen Pau Torres be picked in round 15 in some drafts, not picked at all. Mikalenko might go slightly earlier. Mitchell might go around the 7, 8, 9 mark. Okay, so if you can get a couple of these solid picks mixed in with a couple of them late gems, you're going to be flying. Now, some of the late gems that I've picked out here are Maatsen. Maatsen has gone on average 8 or 9. If you can get him around 8 or 9, that would be huge. That would be absolutely massive. The thing is that I would probably wait till around them times to pick him, because I'm not saying he's not going to be exceptional, but he's only played once for Villa so far. Villa have had a huge amount of influx of players, and a lot of them can play in his position. But I do still think he's going to be number 1 for Villa, and he's going to have a brilliant season. I just don't think from the start he's going to get consistent points and consistent minutes. Eventually he will, but if you're putting him down as your first player, as your base of your defence, it's not going to go well. I have Nico Williams down here. I have Kwanzaa down here. I have Diop down here. But if you can, maybe not Kwanzaa, but if you can substitute that player for another player in that team, that's fine. Obviously, I'm picking out Nico Williams because he's very attacking, but Aina left back. And I think he will start most games. If you want to pick him instead, that's fine. Forest and Fulham have a great run of fixtures at the start of the season. So if you want to pick up one of them defenders that you will get probably late round 15, you could get a Diop, Nico Williams, Aina, Murillo, any player from one of those teams. That takes the pressure off. You can have one last pick for the last round, and you can pick a midfielder or whoever you want in earlier rounds. So if you could somehow swindle, you could do it many different ways, but you could swindle a premium, a top tier, a solid, and then go for 2 late round gems. Maybe you want to go for a premium, a top tier, 2 solid picks, and 1 late gem. You're going to have to pick them in different orders, obviously. The more late gems you put in your team or you want to do, you do that rotation, you're going to have more picks earlier on for other positions. I'd like to have a balance. I wouldn't leave all my late picks or all my defenders to late picks. I'd like to pepper them out throughout the draft night. So, as I said at the start, our premium defenders, they're going to go in the first 3 to 4 rounds. Our top tiers are going to go shortly after that. Our solid picks are going to go slightly later, maybe 8, 9, 10. And then our late gems, we actually have loads of them that you could pick up in the last 2 or 3 rounds very, very easily. And then finally, I have 2 traps in here. Actually, there should be a third, but I couldn't actually get his photo from Fantasy Football, so maybe it's a sign that I was wrong. But 2 players that are heavily, heavily talked about in normal FPL, Barco and FaZe. The only reason they're talked about it in FPL is because of their price point. I think Barco is a great player. I think he can be good for Brighton. But if you look at Brighton's opening fixtures, they aren't good. And Estupiñán will be back after 3 or 4 game weeks. So Barco as a rotating defender, if you're hitting a wild card, might be good. But Barco in the draft as a rotating defender or hidden gem is not good. I would definitely have a Fulham defender over Barco because at least I can plan to play them in the first couple of games. If you pick up Barco, you can't play him in the first couple of games unless you're looking for an attack and return, because Brighton don't have the easiest of fixtures. And by the time they get to some nice fixtures, Estupiñán might be back. So for me, I would totally avoid Barco. FaZe is the same. FaZe, how many clean sheets are Leicester going to keep? Yeah, if he's 4.5 and he can rotate with someone in your normal FPL, that's fine. But there's going to be far better players that can rotate in your defence for the draft. So these are players that I would avoid. The last player I was talking about was Davis from Ipswich. 18 assists last season I think that's what it was. 2 goals, 18 assists, something ridiculous. Again, if we're looking at the clean sheets multiplied by the attack and returns, multiplied by the minutes, he'll probably get all the minutes. How many attack and returns will he get? He's in the Premier League, okay? He could do a Doughty on it and get, 8 to 10 assists. That would be unbelievable. And if he does, fair play to him. But the reality of it is he'll get a handful of assists. Yeah, he'll do well. But how many clean sheets will he keep? And the main issue with him is that he's going fairly early. He's going up around the solid picks. He's going around, I've seen him go around like 7. At round 7, he is not worth it. At round 7, you can pick up so many other players that will match his points. And you can actually wait and get players that will probably better his points, if not equal them. So I would not be going for any of the traps, the FaZe, the Barcos. Just be very, very wary of players that are in your head because of normal FPL. That skews our valuation of draft picks. We don't have values. We don't have price points. We decide the value. And based on the stats, neither of these players are great value. So boom, there you have it. An example of a tiered list that I'm going to use. As I said, there's always loads more players that I have on my watch list. I just think these are some of the best ones. And some of the ideas and strategies that you can implement when you are in the draft. Going for the likes of Nico Williams at the Diops very, very late because they have good fixtures. Hopefully the likes of Kwanzaa are still going to be in the running to start, and we have more gems from other teams. Hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, drop them below. FPL Draft Duo out. Boom.